Alright, how is it going, everyone? This is your host, Arctic Ghost, and welcome to another episode of the Arctic Pauper Show. This time around, I'm bringing you the new hotness on the block. But it's an old friend, an old favorite. Not of mine, but of many people. Esper Familiars. Yes, the deck that when Temporal Fissure was around, we all loved to hate to the highest degree of the sun. And when we were relinquished to Sage's Road Denizen as the win condition, we all even hated playing it. At least I did. Kind of like clicking misery. Anyway, so since Eternal Masters dropped, it brought some new goodies into the format, such like Nimble Mongoose, Desperate Ravings, and of course, Peregrine Drake. Peregrine Drake coming down as a common from an uncommon in Urza's Saga, and it has now revitalized this deck and many a Ghostly Flicker combo decks around all of the Pauper metagame. But since this one's probably the most well known, probably the one that everyone's going to go back to, I figured let's bring this one in first. So how does this deck win? It wins by getting a Peregrine Drake into play with preferably 2 Karus or, of course 5 lands or 4 lands in a Karu, etc. You have a Mnemonic Wall in play. You play Ghostly Flicker, targeting the Mnemonic Wall and the Peregrine Drake. So now you're just getting infinite mana. You're just untapping your mana all the time, gaining 1 to 2 mana every time. So you're getting infinite mana because the Ghostly Flicker only costs 3. You're getting it back with Mnemonic Wall when it comes back in. So you just keep looping that over and over again until your heart's content. And then with a Sage's Road Denizen in play, you're also milling your opponent for 2 cards to turn. And of course in Magic, when your opponent cannot draw any more cards but is forced to, they lose the game. You can also gain infinite mana and capsize everything back, kind of a really slow Temporal Fissure way. You can also draw through your whole deck with Mole Drifter. You can also gain infinite life with the Lone Missionary. The main engine that this deck runs on are Familiars. Although they are very fragile, so be careful because, this is only an 0-3 dice to bolt. This is a 1-1 dice to everything if you don't have Regeneration mana up. As far as the dig spells, you have Compulsive Research because it is the best draw spell for the mana cost. Preordain over Ponder. From testing, I believe Preordain is just naturally better. The fact that you get to push unwanted cards to the bottom and don't have to draw them again is much better than the look at the top 3 and possibly shuffle away with Ponder, in my opinion. And then 4C. With the Familiars, this card is actually just great because it can be 2 mana, scry 4, and draw 2, which is just bonkers. I would love to fit a third one in here, but I will tell you why I didn't. This deck is so anger, just such a trigger of unhappiness to me because of how much I have to click. I put a second Sage's Road Denizen in there just so I could possibly try to win a little earlier than usual. If I didn't have the second Sage's Road Denizen in here, I would definitely make it a third 4C or a second Seagate Oracle. Probably a second Seagate Oracle, but if you're expecting a lot more slower meta, probably the 4C. And then you have Reaping the Graves, because Reaping the Graves essentially just loops everything back because you're just casting so many spells. And with Mnemonic Wall, as long as you resolve the Mnemonic Wall, you can just keep on getting the Reaping the Graves back anyway. As far as the mana base goes, got some fetch lands, basics, 2C the Synod's for Wrench Mine protection, a couple of cycle lands to play basically a 58 card deck, and then only 3 of each Karu because you don't want to draw so many of them so early because if you only have them in your opening hand, you're going to have to mulligan, and you don't want to be that slow out of the gates. And then, of course, Snap. I don't really need to explain this card, so, that's the main deck. This deck used to be a big hitter when Temporal Fissure was around. And then a bunch of the regulars of the Pauper format broke that card into as many pieces as they could and got the card banned. Rightfully so, of course. So now we have this iteration. And actually, Peregrine Drake can be better because you don't necessarily need the Familiars in play to make Peregrine Drake good. You just need 5 lands and a Karu. Because with Ghostly Flicker, you're just untapping lands anyway. So it actually makes the deck a little bit better and a little more fair. As far as the sideboards, you have a couple Cop Green against Stompy and, Boggles and all those types of decks. Now, when I say Boggles, you might be thinking, but it has Hexproof. Well, since the card doesn't actually target the creature, it just chooses a source of damage, it still works. Because it does not target. Hexproof only stops targeting. It doesn't stop choosing. So, Take that for what you will. You have Circle Protection Red, just against red decks. You have Prismatic Strands against all types of decks. You have Prismatic Strands against, uh, maybe Pestilence or Burn, things of that nature. Maybe a Fog against White Weenie and Stompy and all that. Couple Lone Missionaries as just really good blockers on turn 2 and to gain some life and potentially infinite life. Another Reaping the Graves against heavy removal decks. Duress and Dispel against control. You play 1 Dispel and 2 Duress just to keep them guessing that which one they have to play around. That's what I like to do. And then 3 Hoodwink against the Mirror. That's basically what this card is for. It's for the Mirror. Now, this deck is very popular, and so are all the other ones. So, you're going to need Hoodwink, I think, if you want to battle the Mirror, because you're just going to almost automatically lose if you get unlucky and you're the one caught without the Hoodwink. Due to a bunch of internet issues, I'm going to be taking this deck through a league this time around, and I can probably promise you that this deck is going to be very gunned for. So, if I don't do well in the league, it's not really surprising to me, although fingers crossed that I do, because I love winning, just like everybody else that plays Magic. That being said, this deck can fight through hate. It's just, it's difficult, of course, as for any combo deck. Cards that are really good against this deck, of course, are Land Destruction, Hoodwink, just fast aggro decks that don't give you time, and of course, Pyroblast. Pyroblast is probably the best card against the deck because it counters every key card that you have. So, take that for what you will. So yeah, I'm going to run this deck through a league when my internet decides to not be total, utter misery crap. And, yeah. So I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech. It was a little more in-depth than usual. Which, by the way, if you guys would like a more in-depth deck tech, a little longer, a little more explanatory, please let me know. But, if you guys like the quick get it over with, or, sometimes you guys just skip the deck tech anyway, that's cool too. So, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys join me for the rounds, and I will see you then.